Grab Life by the Goals is the podcast for passionate badasses to get inspired, activate their potential, and crush their goals. In a nutshell, we do big shit around here. Whether you're looking to disrupt your career, start or grow a business, or simply have a more kick-ass life, you're in the right place. Come to be inspired, find your swagger, dream bigger, and take actual steps to level up your life. All with a side of real talk and raunchy humor. I'm your host, Lauren Widrick. I'm a life and business coach, and I'm right here on the roller coaster with you. Are you ready? Let's do this. What's up, my badasses? Welcome back to this episode of the Grab Life by the Goals podcast. We have an amazing guest here today. It is Crystal Whiteaker, who's the CEO of Crystal Lily Creative, and she's an inclusive brand consultant. And this is a really good, important topic. Crystal, as you and I were sitting down to prep for this episode, we just had a real ass conversation about stuff that we don't always talk about when it comes to business and branding. And that's why I'm so glad to share what I've learned so far and so much more with the audience today. So Crystal, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Lauren. I'm super excited to have this conversation with you. I love our Instagram DMs and our little chats back and forth, so I know this is going to be good.
We had like an instant connection.
We did.
I think we were connected through Kyle King, who's been on the podcast before, who is an amazing coach and runs business masterminds. And he brought us together, I think I spoke on maybe one of his mastermind calls, and we just hit each other up.
Oh, yeah. I remember DMing Kyle while you were presenting, and I was like, I fucking love her.
Yes, I feel the same. So, yes, we're hanging out in real life. We're in Charlotte, North Carolina right now, which I could not be happier to be with you. And again, to dig into this topic. So, we're going to start with your mission, why you're passionate about this, and what brought you to this place of running this amazing business and helping people create inclusive brands.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. So the short version is that I work with brands and leaders who care deeply about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I work with them to get them rooted in their core values so that they can make sure that it shows in their messaging with an inclusive lens. So people who want to have inclusive practices, create more open, welcoming spaces, come to me to do that work. And I completely geek out on it. I love it so much.
You do.
I do.
You do.
And yeah, I'm basically a corporate trained creative hippie. I
love that. Corporate trained creative hippie.
Yeah.
See, that's very unicorn-like skill set.
Oh, yeah. I use a lot of the things that I picked up in my experience working in corporate for over 10 years in my creative business and my coaching and consulting business. And it's stuff that you and I have talked, like, I didn't think I would ever use again when I became an entrepreneur. And then,
yes,
wouldn't you know, all your skills are transferable. Literally all of them.
Well, all of your lived experiences, this is what Crystal was sharing before we started recording, all of these lived experiences that might seem different. You go from this career to this job to this business. It all adds up to who you are today.
Yes.
And as I've gotten to know you and hearing your backstory, this is why you are the one I will go to, I hope my community goes to build an inclusive brand because you've lived it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's putting it bluntly.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so tell us a little bit about your business, who you work with, and then how you work with folks.
Yeah, sure. So my business, again, is Crystal Lily Creative. And I work with people on two sides of the spectrum. So there are people who come to me and they want to incorporate more inclusive practices into their business. And I guide them through that work. I have a 6-step framework that we go through. And the core of that framework is getting people rooted in their core values. Because the number one thing that I have heard over and over again is that people are so worried about saying and doing the wrong thing.
Yes. I can relate to that.
Yeah. It's very common. And so what I have found is that when we get you really, really rooted in your core values and you learn how to speak through them and operate from them with an inclusive lens, it feels a lot more natural and it's not performative because you're operating from the core of who you are. So that's one way. And then the other side of my business is helping leaders who are already practicing inclusion continue to carry their message forward. So it's more of an agency model where there's copywriting support and things like that.
Okay, so let's dig into some of the deeper questions I was asking you.
Yeah.
Basically, I made her go through a whole podcast episode before we hit record because I have so many questions and she's in town and I'm just here to learn. But what is an inclusive brand? Like how can you spot one? Like this brand is doing it well, they're inclusive versus this one that's not.
I feel like I could give the most obvious one. You asked me who is not an inclusive brand, and I said Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're a brand and you are doing that work in your brand, your business, your leadership team is truly inclusive, then people are going to feel like they can show up in that environment with you, with your team, or any organization that you're affiliated with, and be their whole entire selves, regardless of how they identify, what their race is, their sexual orientation, gender identity, religious practice, socioeconomic status, physical ability. They will be able to show up and be whole. They won't need to hide the truth of who they are, what their experience is, and that will give them more of a sense of belonging. So the short version is really inclusive people and inclusive organizations allow and create space for a sense of belonging for people.
I see. So if you have a brand where somebody is looking at it and is like, I don't know if I could join that community because I would be isolated or I would be alone. That's a non-inclusive brand, right?
Yeah. So I mean, and one of the most basic examples that I can give is look at your social media profile, or you know, if it's just you and you're the solo entrepreneur, that's a different story. But if you have a social media presence where you are constantly featuring people, whether it is models or inviting speakers to speak on your platforms or any of those things, if I have to scroll really far down your social media to find diversity, then you might want to examine who you're connected to, the ways in which you are running your business, the conversations that you're inviting in.
Well, that's what I like about you is it's not just how to have a diverse brand or an inclusive brand. You say it starts within you.
Yeah.
Right? So like we could all slap up a post in support of a certain organization or a certain cause, but if we're not doing the work, it's performative.
Yeah.
That's the way we discussed it a moment ago. So can you elaborate a little bit more about that? Like, what is the difference between, posting things that look like they're inclusive and actually doing the work on the inside?
If you are posting things and leaving it, just posting and, hey, we're inclusive, and you're thinking about it from the perspective of if people see themselves represented, they're going to buy from me, that is the wrong way to go about it.
Yeah. And I see that sometimes.
It happens. It happens a lot, and it's very frustrating for people like me, but
I'm sure. What
matters is, what are you doing outside of that? What are you doing outside of your business? How do you spend your time? What does your social circle look like? And I also acknowledge that depending on where you live, it may be a little more challenging to have an immediate diverse social circle. However, in the space of online business, we have access to so many different people. We can connect in so many different ways. We're an example of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So look at how you are spending your time and where you are spending your energy, who you're supporting, who's referring to you. What does your community look like? If you look at your overall community online, and you are only noticing one or two types of people and you're not seeing more of a range, examine why that might be.
So let's talk about fantasies. Those dark, dirty little secrets in the back of your mind that nobody knows and you never talk about. I know what your fantasy is. It is slapping a resignation letter on your boss's desk because you started your own business and it's taking off. Does that thought turn you on just a little bit? If so, I want to talk to you about Slay Your Side Hustle, which is my signature 90-day program to go from business fantasy to cash flow, your first paying client. This program teaches you literally everything you need to start a professional business, from products to pricing to marketing to sales to operation to legal to client care. It's literally the entire playbook. And you get a squad. You get a ton of partners who are with you along the journey and balancing the same exhilarations and fears that you are on the business building journey. The next round of this program starts on April 4th, 2022, and you get 12 field-tested training modules, weekly group coaching calls, and a robust, mighty network to stay connected to your team in between the calls. It is a proven system that works. If this is turning you on, I want you to go to laurenwidrick.com/slayyourside-hustle for full program details and to register if you're ready. And if you need a little kick in the booty to make up your mind, let's have a quick no pressure discovery call. Go to laurenwidrick.com and hit the Let's Talk button at the top of the page, and we'll jump on a Zoom and see if this really is the right next power move for your life and your career. Again, laurenwidrick.com/slayyourside-hustle. And if you're a badass and ready to make your fantasy a reality, I want to see you on the inside.
Yes, that makes a ton of sense. And let's say there's somebody listening. And again, like, I'm learning along the journey too. There's a lot I need to do. I have a lot of work to do in my own business and my own life. But let's say somebody's listening and they're like, yikes, that's me. When I look around, almost all of my friends look like me. Almost all of my clients look like me or my audience. Where do you go from there?
That's such a good question. And again, I know it can be challenging depending on where people live.
Mm-hmm.
So part of it would be if that's something that you really want to do, if you really care about people who have different lived experiences and you want them to feel welcome, I would research organizations in your area. See if there are different community events, things that are happening that you might not normally go to.
Yes.
You never know who you're going to meet. Strike up conversations with people. I am the queen of random conversations. I had a wonderful conversation with my Lyft driver after getting picked up from the airport yesterday. Instant connection. And, exchanged phone numbers, gave her resources, all the things. Yeah. So be willing to have conversations with people. Be willing to be open. Get curious. And you've got to get curious with yourself too. I know we had talked a little bit about just like the values and working from within. If you aren't doing any internal work and you're only doing things externally,
yes,
it's not going to translate in an authentic way.
That makes a lot of sense. And Crystal asked me earlier today, what are my core values? And here's what they are. So they are richness of experience, growth, and full expression. And so she asked me, okay, well, how can you be inclusive in those core values? And that's how you tie it together, right? So like you identify your core values and then ensure that they're inclusive.
Yeah. So I actually have a free core values guide on my website that people go grab it if you
go
want
grab
it.
this. Go grab it.
There's a core values guide and there's an inclusive brand statement guide as well. And they take you through the process of identifying your core values. So this is where I start with people, like identify those values. What is important to you? I always recommend choosing 3 to 5. Define why the values you choose are important to you. So why do those things matter to you first and foremost? And then how is you having those values a benefit to the people that you connect with and engage with and work with?
Oh.
Yeah.
That's the gold right there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, because how often do companies say, oh, these are our values? Okay, that's great. Like, I love that you have those values. How are they a benefit to me as a consumer or a client?
Oh my gosh.
And take that a step further. How can you speak to inclusion through those values?
This is mind-blowing because I've created my core values. I've been a life coach for 6 years. I love this exercise, but I've never thought about it through the lens of how it benefits others. So like richness of experience, like that's me. You know what I mean? I ultimately have a mission to serve others, to grow who I am and expand so that others can either learn or be inspired or get connected through my network. But I never thought of my core values as being of service to others, really. Nor until today, until I met you, have I been thinking about how to ensure that they're inclusive, that there's an inclusive lens to these things.
Yeah. Do you want to go through that little exercise?
Yes, and it makes me nervous because it's going to demonstrate to the world how much work I maybe have to do and why it's important to do the work. We're here to model it for you today. It's uncomfortable. And we talked about that.
Yeah. Well, we want to make sure that you feel secure in your body going through this too, because I also do a little bit of like body work with my clients as well.
Oh, that's amazing.
So one of the first things that I would ask you is like this discomfort that you feel, like where do you feel it in your body?
I think my shoulders and chest. I'm nervous of asking a dumb question or revealing the gap in my growth. Like, okay, so well, yeah, maybe up here.
There are no dumb questions. So let's just like wiggle it out first.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Thank you for this, Crystal.
Yeah. Uncross your legs.
All right.
All right. And just take a nice deep breath in. Let it go and just Exhale out your mouth. All right. How you feeling?
Better. Good.
All right. Okay. So list your values for us one more time.
Richness of experience, growth, and full expression.
Richness of experience, growth, and full expression. I love this. Okay. So what does richness of experience mean to you?
Until today, I'm so curious how to put the inclusive lens on it.
Well, let's just start. Let's go baby steps.
Okay.
All right. What does it mean to you?
I don't want to leave any life on the table. I don't want to be in my deathbed looking back and being like, I never went to Italy, or I never tried that food, or I never met that person, or I left a dream on the table. I never spoke on that stage. That's a core fear, you would almost say.
Okay.
And so a value of mine is like, fuck it, like go live, like grab life by the goals.
Love that. All right. Now let's take that a step further.
Okay.
How is that richness of experience, like all that passion that you're expressing and why it's important to you, how can you translate that to be a benefit to the people that are working with you? Or even just coming into contact with all of your fabulousness.
Oh, thank you for saying that. Well, something else came up. This might not be what you asked, but one thing I didn't say on that list was meet all the people, learn all the things, right? There are people who have had such different life experiences than me, and I'm not exposed to them on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. And so, eat all the foods, travel all the places, sure. But like, what could these people teach me? What could I teach them? Like, what magic could we create together if we found each other?
Okay. All right. Can you go a little further? Because there's still a lot of you in that when you
True.
think about and there's nothing wrong with that. And also it's still important to remember, like, people at the end of the day, like, we all care about ourselves, right? Like, humans by nature tend to be at least a little bit narcissistic. That's just the truth. That's not calling out hate or anything. But like, how can that benefit me? If I want to work with you, how is that going to benefit me?
This is a good question. See, she's a great coach. It has me a little stumped. So the first thing that comes to mind is, if I've had a rich lived experience, I can model that for others who feel like it's not possible for them.
Okay.
I am a community builder, a connector. You are too. I want the community to richly benefit from one another. And so, as much as I think I'm this like bomb ass podcaster or speaker or whatever, people have told me my superpower is bringing great people together. And so, what if that squad of people was rich? Like I said, richness of experience, but what if it was richness of experience, that everybody's bringing their lived experience together and learning from one another?
Yes, I love that.
Okay.
That's great.
Okay. You're good at what you do. Wow.
Are you sweating?
Yeah, but in a good way.
Good.
Yeah.
And so you don't have to answer this right now, but I'll just tag this for the back of your mind for later.
Okay.
I would spend some time really thinking about and journaling on what the specific word richness means to you and how you can work through that and incorporate that into your messaging as well. Because richness, it's a very juicy word.
Yeah, I know. And I don't actually mean like financial wealth, although that's in there. It's like richness. Like, Crystal and I are going to dinner after this, and we are going to have oysters and champagne in the outdoor. Like, it's going to be rich. You know what I mean? We're not driving through Chick-fil-A. Like,
I can't do Chick-fil-A.
I know you can't do Chick-fil-A. I know. Maybe that's why I said it as a joke. Yeah, like, I want this dinner to not just be food we eat and go home. Like, we're going to have a rich experience of it.
Yeah. And part of that richness, it's not so much about, like, what we're consuming, but, like, the time that we're going to get to spend.
Yes.
The conversation we get to have.
And the energy
right?
exchange. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So taking this further for this third step, that richness of experience, how do you speak to that through an inclusive lens?
I'm hoping you'll just tell me the answer.
And just, let's leave Chick-fil-A out of it.
I got you on that. Okay, so how do you speak to richness of experience through an inclusive lens? So as you're having those rich experiences with a variety of people, places, and environments, sharing it with the world and modeling it for others?
Okay.
Is that one?
Yeah, that's one. Could you go a little bit deeper?
Help me out.
So richness of experience, when I think about it and hearing you talk and just what I know of you, I feel very welcome in your presence. I feel full talking to you. Like, you have an ability to light people up regardless of what their lived experience is.
Okay.
So how can you speak to that?
This is so, you guys are seeing the work happening in real time here because Crystal's an amazing coach and I'm working through it. So I feel like I do speak about that. Like I do want to light everybody up.
Mm-hmm.
But how do I ensure that everybody feels safe hearing my message in particular?
Yeah. So, and that's something that's deeper work. We'll be here for a little bit.
Okay. All right.
What I will say though, if you don't mind me flagging one thing.
Of course.
So something, and this is even relatively new language for me because I've been going through a trauma-informed coaching program as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Even I have work to do, y'all.
Yep.
So part of the language that I'm shifting even for myself is not trying to pull the word safety out. Because we cannot assume what is safe for another person.
I see.
Based on their lived experience. What feels safe for you might not necessarily feel safe for me and vice versa. So what we do is we replace the word safe with brave. So rather than saying I want to create a safe space, I want to create a brave space where where I create a space and I am brave enough to hold this container for people to show up and be who they are, and people who are showing up feel like they can be brave enough to live in their fullest expression and live in their truth and the fullness of their humanity. And then they can create that safety within themselves in that container that you're holding.
You're right. That's so, I can't assume what's going to make somebody else feel safe or not safe.
Right. Yeah. Shout out to Katie Kurtz for her Cultivate program.
That's phenomenal. Okay. So create a brave space where people can be brave and be themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How do you do that?
Oh, it goes back to values. It really does.
Okay.
It goes back to values. And we can continue going through yours, or if you feel like that's a good enough example for everybody. Actually, what was your, so richness of experience, growth.
And I should know this. I just said it. Full expression.
Full expression.
Yeah.
Let's talk about full expression. Because I love that one.
Okay.
All right. So what does full expression mean to you?
So it's not censoring yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's being fully yourself. It's all this freak flag stuff that I talk about, right? It's putting your full self out there and not having to adjust who you're being in the moment based on who's watching or listening. It's like, no, this is me. This is fully me. I want my daughters to live that way. I want my husband to live that way without having to live in a box like I did for so many years.
Yeah. Oh, I feel that. I totally feel that. So taking that a step further, and you're already speaking to it a little bit, how is that a benefit to the people that work with you or engage with you?
Well, I do like to literally teach others to let their freak flag out. So if your marketing is kind of like polished and you're trying to make it sound like the industry when really like you don't talk that way, I'm like, talk the way you talk.
Yeah.
Show what you do. Like if you twerk on the internet or you have a deep faith or you're into a spiritual thing that people would consider fringe or hippie or whatever, like, no, that's you. That's amazing. Others, millions of others are into that same thing. So go be you.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And how would you speak to inclusion through that?
I don't know.
You're touching on a lot of it already.
Really?
A little bit. Yeah. So we're talking about creating that brave space for you, right? You're creating the brave space, the container where people can show up, let their freak flag fly.
Yep.
All of those things, right? And fullness of expression. I mean, it's in the value. What does inclusive fullness of expression look like for you?
Well, for one, my coach right now is really pushing me to go beyond just business. Like I have a tendency to post about like business. I have a side hustle course. You should buy it. Like, and what she's saying is like showcase your whole life, everything that you do, who you spend time with, where you invest your dollars, and like just show more of you because people are getting bored with the whole like, okay, I get it. You help people start side hustles thing.
Okay. But where's the inclusive piece?
Right. I know. This is why I'm struggling.
Yeah. So the way in which you market and the way that you speak to your community, it lets them know that they can come and be and show up however they are, whoever they are.
Yes.
Regardless of how they identify, who they love, all of those things, right?
I think so. I mean, stop being who they want you to be and be you. And so I hope that message is clear. Like, come as you are. I have, like, if you want to live outside the box or a non-vanilla life or a very vanilla life and own that shit, like, that's you. Come be.
Yeah.
We're a squad of freaks who all are trying to like just let our true selves out. And I use that term freak with love.
Yeah.
I know that I like the word freak flag. I realize it's probably not the perfect phrase, but your authentic self.
I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with the phrase freak flag. I'm here for it.
I like it. It's fun, and it kind of winks at the whole thing. So I think where I'm going is, this is kind of a vulnerable question. I know. I want to be more inclusive beyond just the things I've said. Like when I look at my community, I would like a richer tapestry of people with different lived experiences. Right? So for instance, like more racial diversity, more diversity in sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, like able-bodied, like we talked about, versus differently bodied. Like, do I have a rich blend of people? What if the answer is no? Right? Like, do you address those things when you're advising a client? Do you advise your clients to address those things head on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So how might that look?
So there are a few different ways to go about it, depending on where people live. Because again, sometimes I have clients that live in more rural, white, heteronormative, predominant areas. For the most part, though, one of the first things that we want to do is really examine, okay, well, what were your experiences like growing up? I sometimes I think I should have gotten a doctorate in like psychology or something too.
Yeah.
But what are your experiences growing up? What narratives did you absorb about people who don't look like you or have a similar lived experience? We have to start there, because you got to be able to disrupt any potential bias.
I see.
That is living within us. We all have it. I have it. You have it. It's there. So understanding first, where does your bias lie and what narratives fed into that bias, and breaking that down and putting a filter over it. Bias, they don't just disappear like that. It becomes more of a practice, a filter, when you recognize things coming up. Oh, I'm feeling this way because reasons X, Y, and Z.
I see.
And having that filter. And then making an effort to look into your local community. If you really want to have those connections that you say you want to have, what organizations could you potentially get involved with? Are there any community events that are happening that you could show up to and support or even volunteer for? What do those things look like? And you don't do it just to like check the box and be like, oh, hey, I did this thing, I'm inclusive. You do it because your heart's really in it.
Right. That's what I love about your work. It's not just a playbook or a checklist for how to have an inclusive brand. Every time I ask you about myself or my own business, you say it starts with you.
It always starts.
It starts with how you're living.
Yeah.
Like living those core values that Crystal helps you drive out. Like, are you talking about them or are you living them?
Yeah, absolutely. And part of it too is, even I had shared with you earlier, just that sense of belonging within ourselves. So sometimes bias can also be bias against our own selves, a lot of shame and internalized judgment and all of those things as well. So I've incorporated another element with my community where when we're working together, let's also consider how you feel about your own sense of belonging. And this is, I want to be really, really clear. People don't come after me. It's not about pandering to the status quo and making, pandering to like white comfort. It's very much like, do you know how to create a sense of belonging within yourself and operate with your core values in mind as you do that work and work through that bias and, dismantling any potential shame or judgment that you've internalized? Because if you don't know how to do that for yourself, you're not going to be able to wholly be able to do it for other people.
That is so deep and amazing. So a sense of belonging within yourself. If you can't make it safe for yourself to do this work and explore and be honest with yourself, how are you going to do this outside of yourself?
Exactly.
That is, wow.
Is anyone else craving a business conference? I'll tell you what, the biggest breakthroughs and the best connections I've ever made have been at in-person events, and I'm so excited to announce that we're hosting one. The squad and I are hosting the Scale to Six Figures Conference on Friday, March 25th in Charlotte, North Carolina. Now, this one-day conference will level up literally every area of your business, from strategy to sales to marketing to PR to branding to operations and finance. Literally every area. And it's going to be a business building party. You are going to meet the coolest like-minded entrepreneurs. We're going to toast champagne. We're going to dance. It's going to be an amazing in-person event. Go to laurenwidrick.com/conference to sign up, and we will see you there.
Okay, so do you take your clients to that level?
Yeah.
How does that look? Are these coaching sessions? Are these intensives? Like, how does this look?
For that level of work, it's a coaching program, minimum 3 months.
Yep.
That is not something that we're doing in a VIP day.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Because there's a lot of stuff that gets knocked loose, you know? We might have a session and it's like, okay, I'm emotionally drained. You're emotionally drained. See you next week. Like, let's process. Yeah, that's not being done in a VIP day.
I can imagine. Yeah. Do you do VIP days?
I do VIP days.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So if people are just, looking for clarity and connectivity in their messaging and their core values, and they have a general grasp on these things, then the VIP day intensives are 6 hours long. We spend that day together and get into it.
That sounds like a good place to start. I would imagine that if I did that VIP day, I'd be like, okay, also the 3 months. Like,
and that happens. It does happen.
I bet. Okay, so let's say someone's working with you and they're beginning to do the work of creating a sense of belonging within themselves, going out of their comfort zone, looking at their core values through the lens of inclusivity. How does that then manifest in a brand? So since you're an inclusive branding consultant, like, where does that show up in the brand?
Everywhere.
Yeah?
Everywhere. It shows up in the messaging. It shows up in how you connect with your community. So the website, the journey that people go through on the website from the very beginning, like land on your homepage. What language am I seeing? What digital journey am I going through? Is there transparency around pricing? Do I see that you are supporting other organizations or leaders? Do I see what your values are and how you're speaking to them? If I'm on your newsletter, what's in your newsletters? How are you communicating? It shows up everywhere.
So everywhere, social media, newsletters, website.
And if you're a person who gives book recommendations, I'm going to be paying attention to the types of book recommendations that you're giving. All of those things.
I see. And again, it can't be, what I've learned from you is it can't be performative.
No.
You can't be like, go read White Fragility if you've never read the book.
Oh, please don't read White Fragility. It was written by a white woman. Read Do Better by Rachel Ricketts.
Do Better by Rachel Ricketts.
It was written by a black woman.
Show notes.
Not that there's anything wrong with white fragility, but it does further speak to it. Not speaks to it. It further perpetuates the status quo and supporting white leadership.
Okay.
Because
I wouldn't have known that without learning from you.
Yeah. It's a great book. And there are other great books that are written by people who actually have those lived experiences.
Can you say the name of the book again?
Do Better by Rachel Ricketts.
Okay.
The full title is called Do Better: Spiritual Activism for Fighting and Healing from White Supremacy.
Okay, perfect. We're gonna put that in the show notes. I'm gonna read it.
It's a great book. Audible. It's on Audible as well.
Okay.
And it is a book that you're not going to read it in a weekend. You're probably not going to read it in a week because it's about this thick. And there are activities at the end of every chapter.
Okay.
Just to check in, do some soul care, reflection. It's a book that you read a little bit, you integrate. You read a little bit, you integrate.
You have a community, correct?
Yeah.
Do you guys talk about books and current events and topics and process together?
Yeah.
How does that look?
It looks like a very, very real Voxer thread.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a few different containers for myself. I have a Voxer thread of, people, we're all business owners and it's a diverse mix. And then I have my soul sister witchy woo friends, and I have a few different groups of friends that I lean on, and we talk through things depending on what's going on.
The reason I asked is you educated me on something just recently about white comfort. And sometimes I want to educate the audience on what you shared with me.
Okay.
Specifically about putting the educational labor on you. You know what I mean? So like I've been peppering you with questions all day long, and you gave me permission to do so, I think. But
I did.
Talk to me a little bit about like the white comfort and the educational labor and how that can manifest and how it should manifest.
Okay. So for clarity, for anyone who doesn't know what educational labor is, the breakdown of that is that it is essentially expecting education from your marginalized community or people that you're connected to. So just because you have Black friends or queer friends or Latin friends doesn't mean that they owe you explanations on their culture or their lived experiences or why something is racist or homophobic. If they choose to share with you and educate you, that is 1000% an act of love, because it could be potentially triggering for people to explain certain things to you as well. So rather than putting educational labor on your marginalized friends, if you're a white person, first take to Google. And if you get that information and you can come back to your friends or your connections with compassion and say, hey, you know, I recognize you said this thing or you brought this thing to my attention and I took some time to learn and this is what I found, then it's okay to be like, is this accurate? You know, go from there. Don't just automatically be like, well, tell me how that's racist or tell me how that's harmful, because then it comes across as like you're being very, what's the word? The D word. Where are my words? Defensive.
Oh, defensive. Okay.
So you don't want to come across as being defensive. And you also don't want to prioritize your comfort as a white person to just slink away from the work either. You know, if someone brings something to your attention and they say, hey, you know, this could be potentially harmful or this was offensive to me, rather than just being like, how could this be offensive? Or that's not racist or that's not homophobic.
Yep.
Ask, engage, be willing to get curious and say, hey, like, I don't know. And if it's uncomfortable for you to have those things brought to your attention, that just means that there is more of an opportunity for growth and evolution in your own learning.
I see what you're saying. Like, don't put the burden of discomfort on the marginalized group. Like, if you really want to learn and do the work, all work is out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
So do some of the work.
Yeah. You don't, and the work, the discomfort isn't a bad thing. It doesn't have to be a bad thing.
Right.
It's an invitation to explore.
Whew, this is so good, y'all. I mean, if you haven't thought about building your brand through an inclusive lens, this episode is pure gold. So in terms of businesses that you've helped, so think about a client that's come to you and was like, I need help with this. You worked with them. How was their business transformed on the other side?
Oh my goodness. The most recent example that I could give you, well, actually it's not that, pandemic time is a thing.
It is. It is.
The most pronounced example I can give is a client that I had worked with. I'm not going to call her out, but she does a lot of social media work for brands, and she came to me and she was really, really concerned about saying and doing the wrong thing, didn't know how to incorporate these things in a way that felt natural to her. And we did that 3-month work together. And I see the things that she is doing with her platform now, both her newsletter, social media, the people that she has conversations with, the things that she reshares. She is living it in the most honest, authentic way. And she's completely fearless and just very loud about it. It's been freaking phenomenal to watch.
Gosh.
Because when she first came to me, she was, for lack of a better term, a little bit mousy about doing that work, you know, wasn't really sure, very hesitant. And now she just is out loud and very, very engaging and calling people in to also do that work. So complete transformation. Okay. She's very, very confident, not just in her inclusive practices, but even her messaging, because she operates through her core values now. Her messaging is consistent, it's clear, and she's everything that she says she's about.
Consistent, clear, authentic, organic, inclusive.
All of it. Yeah.
All of it. And that's 3 months of working with you.
3 months of working with me.
Have you caught up with her since? Like, how is she?
We're like friends now.
Oh, okay, cool. How is she feeling? Does she feel different in her body? Is she getting a different type of client or a different type of connection through her network? Like, how has it transformed her?
She's booking more dream clients.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, she has dream clients. I mean, she drops into my DM. She'll tag me in social media like, thank you so much, because I'm like, you're really doing it. Like, this is great. And she's like, it's because of you. She's got clients and connections that she I don't know if she would have had them prior to us doing this work.
I'm certain not.
Yeah.
How could she, right? Like, I can imagine that she let her real self out. Like, she was doing the work, she was living it, she shared it.
Yeah.
She's resharing, she's giving voices to others who have a great message. Like, that is an upward spiral.
Yeah. Yeah. She's doing great.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay, do you have anything else you want to add about building an inclusive brand or anything else that we talked about?
I think that the most important thing is to remember the humanity. Lead human first. We didn't talk about this, but
okay.
When you're doing this, lead with a human first lens. The bottom line will take care of itself. If you are being genuine and operating from your core values and you're putting people first, everything else begins to fall into place.
I mean, drop the mic on that. That's so true. And it's easy to lose sight of that when you're in revenue growth mode. Grow. Like, grow my audience. And it's like, am I actually taking care of humans?
Yeah.
And it's what you coached me through a moment ago, which is, are my core values actually of service?
Yeah.
Crystal is a phenomenal coach, and she's such a good friend of mine now. How can people find you if they want to have you guide them through this work?
The easiest, fastest way to connect with me is Instagram, at Crystal Lily Creative. And then there is my website, crystallily.co, and that will link you to my education website, because fun fact, I was a photographer before. I'm still working on that transfer of the website stuff. So,
well, I'll drop this in. I know I'm trying to wrap up, but you have so many fascinating layers. You shared with me earlier, so I'm going to like dovetail us on a quick final topic, that it was in building your photography business.
Yeah.
After all of the other amazing career paths that you had, you built a photography business and people started to come to you because you had built a beautifully inclusive brand. What was that like? Was that unexpected when people were like, how did you do this?
Very unexpected.
Really?
I was like, I'm just over here like documenting people's memories and milestones, and anybody's welcome. And so when people started asking me for mentorship, I was like, wait, I can get paid to teach people how to do what I did and do it in a genuine way? Yeah, it was cool.
Well, that's what's called, and I want all of my budding entrepreneurs to hear this, that's what's called the universe screaming at you to do something. Like, she was living it. It was not like a product that she spun up. She was just doing it, and then people were like, how did you do that?
Yeah.
Which means that your calling is right in line.
Oh, I will say this. When I really stepped into this space, I can recall the feeling for a good month or two while I was developing the core of my framework. I felt like a literal fire in my belly. It was just like, oh, this is it.
This is it. I mean, this is it. I think you're right where you need to be. I know everybody listening has learned so much. So you've directed us to your Instagram and your website, but you have a downloadable tool.
Yes. If you go to my website or even my Instagram, it's in the link in my bio. You can download. There is a core values guide, and there is an inclusive empowered brand statement guide that people can download, and those are free. And that's a good place to get started.
I would say download that, send Crystal and or me a DM, and let us know how that experience was for you, so that we can be inclusive in this experience. Like, as we all do the work, we can support one another. So Crystal, thank you for being who you are and for everything you do and delivering your gifts bravely to the world. Hearing the story of just your one client, and I know you have so many more, like how your one client created a ripple effect of goodness beyond just her own business, is so inspiring.
Thank you for having me. I'm really glad that we got to do this in person.
I agree, because we are off to have oysters and champagne, you guys. So we will leave you with that. Thank you so much for listening, and don't forget to grab life by the goals, and we will see you next time.
Thank you so much for listening to the Grab Life by the Goals podcast. If you loved this episode, I would be thrilled if you subscribed wherever you listen to your podcasts, so that you can get notified when an episode drops and we can rendezvous like this every single week. If you're feeling frisky, maybe slap a 5-star review on this bitch, and maybe even some comments about what inspired you from this podcast episode. This is simply so more people can find us and join our squad of badassery. I love me some Instagram, so come find me. My handle is @LaurenWidrick, and if you screenshot and share this episode with your peeps, I'll come shower you with all the virtual hugs and kisses. Until next time, grab life by the goals, my friend.